Hello, everybody. We're looking at the organization of the nervous system today. Um, and this picture right here really caught my attention. I don't think we necessarily realize the importance of our nervous system until we actually get into looking at it. So, when you think about what psychology is and how the body and your behavior and what creates that behavior, we have to spend some time talking about the brain, talking about looking at the nervous system in general, um, uh, because there's a lot that's going on here. And this is going to seem a lot like biology, but we're going to do our best to keep this as simplistic as we can. So if you look at our first slide here, and you look at the organization of the nervous system, this looks like a lot, but it's really not. Um, when you think about the nervous system itself, it's split up into two different parts. So, the two parts that we have to look at are going to be focused on one being our central nervous system, and then the other being the peripheral nervous system. And you kind of want to think in terms of the two. The central nervous system, and if I go back to this picture, your central nervous system is going to be the brain and the spinal cord. Like that's it. It's centralized. It's right there. Sometimes you will see the brain stem included into this, but for our purposes, we're going to look at the brain and the spinal cord as part of the central nervous system. The other part of the nervous system is going to be your peripheral, excuse me, nervous system. If you think about peripheral vision, it's what's on the outside. So when you think about the central nervous system, when messages are being sent from the brain through the spinal cord or coming to through the spinal cord to the brain, the outside is where those messages are coming from. So you can kind of think of this like uh, when you're getting on, let's just use the Bluegrass Parkway as an example. Like if that is the spinal cord, all of the exits that go off of it are going to be your peripheral nervous system. So those are neurons or building blocks of the nervous system that are running on the outside of the nervous system and of the brain. So again, central nervous system, brain, spinal cord. Spinal cord again is going to connect the brain and the peripheral nervous system. So if we look at the peripheral nervous system specifically, there are two different parts here: the somatic and the autonomic. So somatic, you can think of in terms of voluntary muscles that transmit sensory information to the nervous system, to the central nervous system. So we have voluntary actions that we can control. Like we can control moving our hand, we can control moving our head, we can control walking, running. All of these things we can control, so they are voluntary movements. Because they are voluntary movements, they fall under this idea of the somatic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system, on the other hand, is exactly what it sounds like. It's autonomic. So it's automatic. Being automatic, this controls involuntary bodily functions. Um, so your heartbeat, the functions of most of your major organs. Like we don't have to sit here and think about heartbeat, heartbeat, heartbeat. Now, what we can do is we can actually control our breathing, which is going to increase our heart rate or slow it down depending on how hard that we need to breathe, things of that nature. But we cannot just simply say to ourselves, all right, heartbeat faster. It doesn't work like that. Um, So, off of the autonomic nervous system, you have two more branches that are here, and you have to take a look at how the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, how they are going to control these parts of our bodies. So think of the autonomic nervous system. It's involuntary bodily functions. So a lot of times we have to speed our bodily processes up. It's kind of like if we are being prepared for something. We'll talk about something known as a fight or flight response. So in which our bodies become aroused. So again, heart rate's going to speed up, our eyes are going to dilate. Again, things that we don't necessarily control ourselves in the moment. So those are going to be controlled through the sympathetic nervous system itself specifically. Now, in order to come back to this homeostatic state, we have to have another, it's kind of like a break. Like we have to have something that's going to bring us back to normality, and that is our parasympathetic nervous system. So that's a quick rundown of our nervous systems. Very interesting to look at, but again, these are some very simple ways of looking at our parts of our nervous system and how it is all going to fit together. Within our nervous system, we do have several types of neurons. Again, neurons are the building blocks of the nervous system. So when you look at what is occurring here, we have to have different types of neurons to handle different types of messages. So when we look at neurons, sensory neurons are going to, as it says, send the impulse from sensory organs. So you think about what your sensory organs are, from your nose to your eyes to your ears, even your skin. These messages are going to be sent from your sense organs to the spinal cord and to the brain. So again, sensory neurons, pretty simple. They are of the senses. Interneurons. If you think about what the prefix inter means, it's between. So an interstate. If you're on an interstate, most interstates are going to go from large city to large city. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to pass through other places on these interstates, but the point is for you to get from point A to point B. So interstate. This is going to, when you look at an interneuron, these are relaying messages between what you see on here, sensory and motor neurons. Now, the motor neurons, motor, okay, think about motion, think about muscular movement. So they are sending impulses from the brain to the spinal cord to muscles, to parts of your body that need to cause motion. All right. So these are your three big parts of our three main types of neurons. Now, if you are in class, you're going to, at this point, you're going to be getting a diagram in which you are going to be recreating a neuron. But for those of you that are at home, we're going to talk about what this neuron is and the different parts of it. So the neuron that you see here, these are connected like roads. And you have millions of these in your body. Messages are sent from one neuron to the next. These are lined up. Again, you have different types of neurons, and we're not going to get into great detail. But when you look at these different parts, the dendrites, and if I go to the next slide, this has some explanations about what each part is. So when you look at the dendrites, dendrites receive messages from the other neurons and other cells, okay? And those messages are going to enter in through the dendrites. Once it comes in, it is going to enter into the cell body, or this part here of the neuron. What is going to happen is there is actual electric productivity that is going to create a electric impulse. Once that impulse occurs and it reaches a certain threshold, then the neuron is going to fire. And when it does, the message is going to be sent down through what is known as the axon. The axon is what you see here. This tube-like structure. Now, surrounding the axon is going to be what is known as myelin sheath. This myelin sheath is a protective coating. It is going to insulate and is going to help with the speed of these neural impulses traveling from the cell body into the last part of the neuron, which is your terminal buttons or your axon terminals. And that is where the message is going to exit. And as it says here, it's a junction with other cells. And you can see that the dendrites from the next neuron are going to be receiving that message. And again, we don't have to get the biological aspects of how exactly this communication occurs from axon to axon. We just need to have a general understanding of what is happening. So again, your major parts, dendrites, the cell body or your soma, and you also have a nucleus, which obviously as a cell has to have. Your axon, which is the tube-like structure that is going to carry the message after the electrical activity happens. You have your myelin sheath, okay, which insulates and protects. A couple of these we don't have to worry about. And then you have your axon terminals or your terminal buttons where the message is going to leave. So pretty simple there. But if we are in class, you're going to be looking at a diagram of this and creating it to help you with a upcoming quiz. If you are at home, there is a video that is going to look at the neuron to help you in preparation of that quiz. This neuron vocabulary is going to help us with our assignment for the day. So outside of the neuron itself, there are some terms that we need to understand for a neuron. So the neuron vocabulary, you talk about an all or none principle. So it's all or none. So either it fires or it doesn't. Real simple. So like the electric threshold that it has to reach, it's like the point of no return. It's like it's going, 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 and if it hits this threshold, then it's going to go. But if it doesn't quite reach it, then it's not. The resting potential is looking at how a neuron is ready to fire. So it's ready, okay? It's there. It's prepared. When the message needs to be sent, that is going to create what is known as an action potential. So the resting potential, the neuron is ready to fire. The action potential is when it actually happens. And boom, there it goes. The neuron fires and the action potential occurs. Now, there is a refractory period or an absolute refractory period between the action potential and when the neuron is ready to fire again, which is known as the resting potential. So it has to recuperate back to what is known as the resting potential. So those are 4 terms. Now, we're going to look at this, and in your assignment for today, you are looking at how do these terms explain the process of the firing of a neuron in comparison to the firing of a gun. So this is in Google Classroom, and you have a Google Doc that has that same graphic on it, and below it you are going to actually compare these 4 terms to the firing of a gun. By doing that, you're showing understanding of how these apply outside of the regular definition. So this is an application activity that is going to help you. So at this time, you're going to have some time to work on this assignment. Please make sure that it gets turned in. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.